We have this MTD Pro 21-inch electric start snow blower this morning. Checked it out at the end of the day on Friday. Essentially the carburetor was leaking on it, so it was all gummed up real bad. We went ahead and put a new carburetor on it, brought it off the table. It fired right up, ran perfectly fine, no issues whatsoever. I ran it for probably a minute and a half, 2 minutes, and then it just died flat on its face. So nothing whatsoever out of it from that point. Every now and again, if I'm trying to start it, it'll act like it wants to start. So it'll give a little puff or something and act like it wants to start, but other than that, nothing. Getting nothing whatsoever from it, so I went ahead and clipped my spark tester on, checked it. It showed okay and then kicked off, which I thought was kind of weird, so I went ahead and put a new battery in it, tested it again. It still said okay and shut off. See there, it acted like it wanted to start, but each time I did it, said okay and flipped off, which I didn't think anything big of it. You know, I've never had any issue with the spark tester before, so I took it that it was getting spark. I went ahead and tried starting fluid again. I could get a couple puffs out of it every now and again, but nothing much. So I went ahead and pulled the original spark plug out, or the one that was in there, you know, when this happened, and it was a little bit wet. Didn't really have much, you know, much on it, but it was a little bit wet. Didn't seem like it was flooded out or anything, so I went ahead and put a new spark plug in it, which the one that was, you know, that I just showed you was already new. Put the new spark plug in, no change. So I tested the kill switch on the thing, just your key switch over here. I tested it, so if you pull it off the back side, there's a little clip. You can pull it off the back side after you remove that clip. And once it's off, you're completely disconnected from everything, so your unit won't turn off at that point. Obviously there's nothing to connect it, connect the two terminals, but that kind of eliminates that as a problem. No change there also. So this plug kind of looks wet, doesn't look real wet, but definitely got some fuel on it. So what I did from there is, while I had the plug out, I went ahead and tested it against the block. So when I did that, get this a little bit better. So when I'm testing it against the block here, we're getting nothing out of it at all. So there's no spark whatsoever. And that is with the unit disconnected here. So at this point, what we're thinking is, obviously the coil went bad, you know, so we're gonna tear into this thing and see what happens. So when you originally open this thing up, you know, obviously you want to check the oil first and everything. We already knew this thing was good to go, and along with the fuel. You want to make sure it's not a fuel issue before anything, because 9 times out of 10 it really is. It's almost always a fuel related issue. So we're gonna go ahead and pull what we're gonna do is we're gonna pull the carburetor cover off here. Just 10mm bolts all the way around, that's all you really need. Pull the front off. You can disconnect your primer at that point from the carburetor. Just let it hang to the side, otherwise you can pull it completely on off of there. From there, what I like to do is disconnect the fuel line. Go ahead and put a fuel shut off on the end, because we got to take that fuel line off, because we're going to go ahead and remove the recoil. And it's not too bad on these, not too bad of a process. Again, we're just getting that kind of out of the way. And there, we just got our 10mm around the outside. to get the whole recoil off, we do have to remove the tank, so we'll take the end from up top. Just one that goes into the plastic, and that holds everything up as far as the tank goes. And then it just comes out on the side, so it's a little bit easier if it is empty, but otherwise you can get it out of there without it being empty. It just kind of slides out, and then you'll have to move the fuel line up through, and then you can get the hanger bracket there off. So pretty easy with the tank. This whole process isn't too terribly difficult, so I may be able to just leave that there. I don't remember. It's been a while since I've done one of these. We'll go ahead and take it off just to get it kind of out of the way, and it just goes down and then pulls straight out. So, well, there we go. Got one side out and the other side out. So it's just a bracket here, and it just holds the tank up to the top. We got the front one off. There's one right up front here also. And that's just to get that top guard out of the way, because there's one behind it. So one way back behind. Get that thing out of there. All right. So now that we can see everything, there is one all the way in the back here. It's just up at the back top corner. Pretty easy to just I've just got a few 6-inch extensions here to get me kind of further away from the action. And then we got one at the back corner. Just lets me use this right angle in here, just extremely handy. If not, you can use a regular wrench with a couple 6-inch extensions. That works well too. It just takes a little longer, obviously. But that's all. There's just those few bolts, and then the whole assembly comes off. Now you do want to be careful when you're taking this off that up top here, that you don't pull off any of these springs or anything. So you want to come down and out kind of at an angle to make sure that doesn't mess anything up. So from there, the thing just pulls straight off. And now the whole assembly, so if you look at the back, those are where your bolts are at the back side that you couldn't really see real well. Now we're down to the coil. So what we want to do is look and see what's going on. So the first thing I like to do on something like this is normally I would just go ahead and unplug the kill switch. So in this instance, on these, they don't have like a little tab where you can just unplug your kill switch. So the only way to really test these as far as the kill switch goes here and see if that's working is to go ahead and remove. You can remove the bolt. Go ahead and remove that kill there. So all that's doing is taking the kill out of the equation. So the kill switch comes out on the bottom side on this black wire, and then up top here, if the connection is made at the switch back through, that's what tells it to turn off. So these are just two pieces of metal, and all this thing does is when the key pulls out, these two connect in the middle. They just come and squeeze together. So that just connects your black wire and your blue wire. Well, your blue wire goes back to ground, and that's what kills your unit. So we're going to test it without that installed. Now I'm not going to worry about valve spacing right this second on this thing because I only loosened 1 bolt. We're still a good ways away. I can still see light behind the magnet, but it's still nice and close. So it was right over there by the magnet. So at this point, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and test the spark again. And we can just test it against the block and see if that changed anything. If it did and we have spark, hey, we know we have an issue with some wiring somewhere. If it didn't, we know the coil's bad. So we get no change whatsoever from the spark on this unit. There's no wiring or anything grounded out anywhere or anything like that. Yeah, and every now and again you do get a real faint, weak spark. But it is nothing like it should be. You should be able to see a high powered spark from there on anything that you're testing. So in this case, we've got a bad coil. What you would do from here is you would go ahead and just take the 2 bolts out. And you're going to go ahead and replace that coil with a new one, and that's going to get you back up and running right. So again, just 2 bolts. The whole assembly comes out from there. You can literally just take it down and out. All there is to it. So we got our new coil in from the one we checked out yesterday. And this is an OEM coil. It did not come in a bag or anything like they normally do, though. You want to put it back on exactly the way the other one came off, just like this. Back on there. And you can use normally we just use a business card to gap them. Okay. You just want to guide these back on up like they were. The one goes back up to the top at the switch at the top. And we're just going to go ahead and you want to rotate that magnet to where it's right in the middle of your 2 studs. And you go ahead and just put your business card in there and let it go ahead and suck down to the magnet. And then you can start your bolts. Now, when I mentioned this earlier, I did say valve spacing. Not a valve. Definitely magneto spacing. The coil is bad. A lot of people call them different things, but ignition coil magneto. This one's a little bit too large. I'm going to go ahead and just cut this card in half. Just to get in there. Alright, so that's nice and level now. I think it was hitting on the edge or hitting on the gear for the starter in the back. Obviously, when you're trying to start that, you want to make sure everything's clear, don't get in the way of it. Go ahead and tighten that back up. That wire moved a little far up. I don't really like that. We got one of our little pieces of our wire brush stuck on there. Alright, you want to push it towards the coil when you're doing that. And you want to make sure you get your card out of the way. And you want to be as close to the flywheel basically without hitting the flywheel magnet as you can. So in between the magnet and both the top and the bottom, you want to make sure there is spacing in there. It should never touch. You shouldn't hear scraping. You shouldn't see any scraping along the flywheel. People like to sand them down and stuff like that sometimes, but a little bit of rust is not going to get in the way of a magnetic field. So that's not going to make a difference whatsoever with the way they work. So we're going to go ahead and put the plug back in at this point and go ahead and put the cover back on. Get everything 100% back together, and then from there we'll see what this thing does. Should fire right up just fine. When you're putting the cover back on, again, you want to make sure that this top piece gets actually underneath up here. You don't want it to hit on any of these springs up top. A lot of times, it's a very common mistake when people are putting them back together. They'll catch one of those springs and the thing will just run wide open. So you don't want that. Get them all around there. And then these are all the same 10mm bolts that we took out. Same ones all the way around. Now on these coils, I don't know, some people might try to use an aftermarket or something like that. I've never had good luck with aftermarket coils. We don't use any aftermarket coils whatsoever. So anything coil related aftermarket wise, I don't think they've came a long way whatsoever. Some things aftermarket wise have, but coils is not one of them. So definitely stay away from the aftermarket coils. Well, that bottom one's not wanting to go in well. There we go, got it lined up. Might need my magnet on a stick for this. Get you started up in there. It's there. And again, you want to make sure you don't hit that spring on the back. If you hit that spring on the back side there, it's going to run wide open for you. So the spring that's right in the way of that bolt. Got those two, and then you've got your one down on the bottom. You can get to by flipping it up pretty easily. We always like to get everything started before you tighten anything down, otherwise you'll have a hard time getting the rest of anything going. Nothing will line up right at that point. If you tighten just one down to begin with, you'll fight every last one of the rest of them. So trying to get the one up top there, but I can't even see it from this angle. There it is. Carburetor's leaking a little bit, coming down. Okay. So I'm just going back around and tightening these up now. Got those wires out of the way. Got everything out of the way coming up through. And you can go ahead and run your spark plug wire down and back through here where it comes up and over, and then we can plug him back in after we get him tightened down. All right. Oop. And you can always just slide that piece there straight down in as far as the governor linkage goes. Pull the carburetor backwards and it just slides straight down in. So I usually like to get the spring first. It makes it a little bit easier, but slide it all the way back. We always replace the intake gaskets when we have anything off anyway, and then up top, I'm just gonna plug that back into your switch, and that's a new one. So it's kind of a tight fit. It worked though. Get the front. Whoop. Almost forgot my little and then the fuel tank. So it's got to go back on. So we're just going to put it back up through just like it was. It sits. And I went ahead and put the cap on the top there. Kind of holds it in place for you pretty good. And then what you want to do is you want to slide these, you want to slide this back in the holes. There's holes on either side. And lift it upwards after you got it in there. And all that's going to do is that's going to get this piece locked into that plastic on the back side, on both sides of this tank, to have it supported. Guess I could do the back side first. There it goes. Move over to the front. And again, it's just a hole right here in the side. And you're trying to get both of those in there. So now it just comes up and it pulls up to the top, and then it screws up in the top here. So pretty simple design, but it's kind of weird the way it sits in there, the way it all actually works. And if you don't get this screwed in right up top, it'll definitely break the plastic for you. So make sure you get that into the notches and everything. There's two notches, a notch here and a notch at the back side. Make sure those are in well before you screw all this together. And then we'll go ahead and hook this thing up and see what we got going. Go ahead and throw the fuel line back on. Okay. So we weren't getting any good spark there. As I showed you on my spark tester, it's one of the better ones. It usually works pretty well. This is the other one I have, kind of one of the backups that I grabbed when I didn't think the other one was working well. But it was flashing to good spark and then shutting off for some reason. But I was thinking that the spark was still good at that point until I investigated further, figured out that it actually wasn't. This was a coil issue, kind of a common issue on these. These coils don't tend to last too long, but that should be the diagnosis and the repair for you. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.